Hey leaders, welcome to the Lead Culture Podcast, part of the Art of Leadership Network. I'm your host, Jenni Catron, founder and CEO of the Foresight Group. We're a company dedicated to helping leaders develop thriving teams. Each week, I'll be your guide as we explore practical strategies to equip you with the tools you need to lead with clarity, confidence, and build unstoppable momentum in your organization. My mission is to be your trusted coach, empowering you to master the art of self-leadership so you'll learn to lead yourself well so you can lead others better. Each week, we take a deep dive on a leadership or culture topic. You'll hear stories from amazing guests and leaders like you who are committed to leading well. So let's dive in and keep learning on this leadership journey together. Before we get to today's episode, I wonder if you're looking for new insights and practical tips about leadership, cultural trends, and the future church. If so, you should check out On the Rise. It's an email newsletter written by Cory Nikkel and delivered directly to your inbox every Friday. A great way to give you a few ideas to think about over the weekend. I have been a longtime friend of Cory Nikkel, and his thoughts and insights always get me thinking, always help me grow as a leader. So I want to encourage you, if you'd like to start receiving On the Rise, visit ontherisenewsletter.com to sign up. This content is exclusive to newsletter subscribers and is published nowhere else on the internet. Again, that's ontherisenewsletter.com to subscribe for free. And when you do, you'll get a sample newsletter delivered right away so you can get an instant taste of what it's like. Friends, today I have a fabulous conversation with a new friend, Cory Nikkel. Cory is a motivational speaker, innovative educator, and the head of high school for Des Moines Christian, the premier leader in Christian education in the Midwest. His influence as an educational consultant has brought him to collaborate with over 25 schools nationwide, where he empowers schools to harmonize their culture and ground their values. Friends, you are going to love this conversation with Cory. I always enjoy a leader who is willing to share about the realities of leading culture well, right? The ups and downs, the highs and lows, just a leader who's saying, hey, here's what I've led through. Here's how I've navigated some of the challenges. And that's exactly what Cory does. And he gives us so many thoughtful insights on how to lead well, particularly lead culture well. We talk about the importance of setting the standard for culture and then coaching people to meet it and what to do when they don't. He talks about the deposits that we're making into the bank of culture, how the importance of listening, acting, and proximity are so critical to culture building. And then he asks us this really hard question that I hope you will follow up on. He says, ask yourself the question, am I in the way of my culture growing or changing? Such a profound question, simple question, but profound insights to help us lead culture well. So here is my episode with Cory Nikkel. Well, Cory, I have been so excited for this conversation. You and I got to catch up. It's almost been a couple months ago. We were at a Maxwell leadership event together. And I think we were sitting at the same table and something about culture came up and it was like instant connection in that as I got to hear your story and some of what you've led through. And of course, all my listeners know my passion around the topic of organizational culture. So they quickly understand how it was just so fun to kind of dive in and learn from you. So welcome to the podcast. And I would love for you maybe to just paint a little picture of your world. Tell the listeners like what you do, what your world looks like, so they kind of understand your leadership context.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me on, number one. And I remember that moment, Jenni. It was like sitting at that table, like, oh, there is an expert on culture and growth right out here. I got to ask her every question possible. And so that feeling was reciprocated, and I'm just so honored to be here with you and your listeners today, for sure. But yes, my background is in education, and so I've been in the industry around 15 years now. Started as that normal classroom teacher, and now have the position of a what's called head of high school
Mm-hmm.
at a Christian school here in Iowa. That we believe is one of the premier Christian schools in all the Midwest. I know we have a fun connection of
I was
some
going
of
to
you.
say, you don't just believe that you're one of the premier schools. That is the truth. Like being a Midwesterner, yes, we have a mutual connection with one of the leaders here from my home church who is gone out to spend time with you guys. Like you truly are one of the schools kind of leading the way for Christian schools. So it's very true.
Yeah, well, thank you. We are honored with that, and it's an exciting time. So I get to overlook the high school and be a part of our executive leadership team and lead our entire school district, which is not only just faculty and staff, it's students, it's families, it's the vision for the future, and so it's a really beautiful seat that I get to be in partnership with the community. Alongside that, I get to work with a lot of other schools, so I consult
Yeah.
on school growth and school systems, and so worked with multiple other Christian schools all around the nation, which is just beautiful because I get better being around really great people doing education around the U.S. And then that has been a fun journey, just leading me to work with some businesses. I love to speak as well, and so I've been graced with some stages and talking about growth and our Christian walk and growth and everything like that. So
That's
our,
fun.
our language is the same, Jenny. So it's a fun place to be near you and learn from you.
Well, I likewise. Um, I love also, connecting with people in different types of organizations because the truths of culture just permeate, right? Like it's like I can be talking to you in education, I can be talking to somebody in business, I can be talking to somebody in ministry, and it's like people are people, and the
Yes.
stewardship of people is still the heart of what we do, regardless of the industry. I'd love to hear from you. Where was that aha for you in that culture matters? Like where did the passion, kind of get birthed for you in your journey in education? Like to go, gosh, this is a big deal. I need to pay attention to it. I'd love to hear that part of your story.
Yeah, that's a great question. I first realized in my own trainings to become a school leader that they don't teach you how to manage people and culture. That's
Right.
never part of a usually of a master's or educational program. And I distinguished it there, and I knew quickly, like, you either just are or aren't, and you either care about it or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I remember actually first being, a teacher in a classroom who had a leader myself, and I was on the flip side of culture, right? I was a part of the culture. I was a teacher, part of the school, and I had a whole bunch of thoughts on things we could do better or improve or why I felt the way I felt, and honestly was frustrated with my leader. And as a very young teacher, which don't always advise this, but I did it, like showed up at my principal's door to be like, "Hey, I think we got things to work on." And I just got told, "Hey, I don't got time for that."
Hmm.
And then I realized what was most important to him. And I realized that maybe I'm not a fit here, but I can do my best to influence those around me. And that's where I started getting obsessed about it. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, how do I make my next door teacher in a better place than where they were yesterday? How do I grow myself to influence others, even if I'm not the boss,
Right.
to help everyone have a better experience, student, family, teacher. And that's what inspired me and led me into leadership was, hey, I think I can do this. I think I can care
Mm-hmm.
about something that actually is one of the most important things to people, is that they get to go to a job in an organization that they're excited to be at every day because the culture and the community is so vibrant.
Oh, gosh, I love that. You're right. People either intuitively like get it and understand the significance of it, or they have to kind of make a bunch of mistakes along the way to figure out the value of it, right? And I was kind of the latter. I was the, bulldozer who kind of was like just out to like achieve great things in the early stages of my career. And then I was like, oh, wait, right? People are the point. I need to
Mhm.
actually be thoughtful and intentional. And that's when my journey for just passion for leadership and then passion for building great teams kind of emerged. Um, I'd love for you, you talk about, how you even consult around growth. And I think this is a really unique intersection that I think you are so brilliant at is you absolutely are passionate about the people, but you have this also this great conviction around we need to grow, we need to have an impact, we need to do big things. You know, again, you guys are the school you're at now is one of the premier schools in our area. So how do you build a culture where growth is expected? How do those two things work together? I'd love your insights on that.
Yes, so that's such a great segue here. Um, in education specifically, the system is set up to grow kids,
Yeah.
not to grow adults.
Right.
So
Right.
from the forefront, adults are entering into this just thinking they're managing children's growth, and that theirs doesn't matter. And so, truthfully, in my industry, it's a flip on no, 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 no. Actually, if we want children to grow exponentially, you first must be growing and the model of growth. And so that's what we had to do within our school is say the most important thing before a child learns something is that you as the adult in the room are growing, that you are
Mm-hmm.
learning and at a trajectory that is going to actually profoundly impact the child.
Hmm.
And so what we did, truthfully, our first move of expecting growth from our culture was removing comfortable zones
Hmm.
because people love to be comfortable. They
We
love to arrive
do. Yep.
nook and corner with some comfy furniture and some sensory toys and like box it off and say, this is mine. And I'm just going to sit here. And so we actually started removing those. We removed the places that people could hide. For us, that was how we set up their goal, like growth development goals. It's also how we set up compensation. And in
Okay.
education and in a lot of industries, it's step and ladder. I'm
Right.
here a year, I get paid this much. I'm here another year, I get paid this much. So that's a comfortable zone. I just got
Sure.
to keep going up and I keep getting paid.
Yeah.
And so we said, well, what if it's not just time and space? It is my growth dictates how much I can earn.
Right.
Those who want to grow will be compensated via their growth. And so that comfortable zone we take out, we reset it with the standard is you need to grow. And then all your goals and your development is tied to growth because that's the standard.
Yeah.
And the compensation follows it. And then all evaluation and growth coaching then becomes authentically a part of what we do
Yeah.
because
It all works
it
together.
does. And then without it, this just isn't the place for you then because that's the standard. We're
Wow.
not going to be comfortable. We're going to remove those barriers and say we want a beautiful culture of uncomfortability that
Mm-hmm.
challenges us to grow and find a solution and innovate. And so that was our really how we built the culture and
Yeah.
started from ground zero.
How did people react to that? Like,
They're scared.
I was going to say, yeah, talk us through leading through that change management. Because you're right. Like
Mhm.
traditional, and I mean, I have friends who are in education. And so traditional education, it makes so much sense. It's like, yeah, we're here to help the kids grow. And so there's not, even though learning and growth is a part of what we do, we think it's for the kids rather than for us. And so that's a major paradigm shift. So talk about the change management of that.
Yeah, the immediate reaction is that fear, like, oh, what does this mean for my life? What does this mean for my compensation? Uh, am I going to make the cut? Is this
Sure.
a cut system where you just get rid of people? And it's like, no, 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 no. So we actually had to always go back to the why and frame it for them and say, you have to remember, this is about you. We have your best interest in mind.
There you go. Yeah.
And we know, right, the growth mindset is better than the fixed mindset. But people are scared to leave their comfortable zones,
Mm-hmm.
their box, their classroom, because it's what they know. But here's the other thing. They also know when they put their notes in their job capabilities side by side with others, they're going to be inspired to do something with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then their default, the fear there is like, ooh, I'm going to actually have to really work hard to do something that's uncomfortable. And so we were able to see their fears and listen very closely, but then distinguish this is the best thing for you,
Yeah.
right? Like you're called to something greater. You're called to development. You're called to always improve. And it's not like as much as, and this is the other weird paradigm, but as much as it's about your growth, at the end of the day, it's actually then translated to what you can do for a child in a classroom.
That's right. Yeah.
So
If you're growing and getting better, you're going to show up better for
yes,
the whoever you serve. In this case, students in
yep,
in the classroom. But that's true for every leader. That our commitment to big uh, drum for me is the self leadership piece. Like lead yourself well to lead others better. And so that's what I hear you saying in that.
yep, yep, absolutely. So it's been a beautiful process, and it took a couple of years, but now people are bought in. They know that's the standard. They know it's for
Sure.
them. It's good for them, and it's challenging and hard. But you know what? They're way more stimulated and creative than they've ever been.
I was going to say, you've probably been a part of other environments like this too. That if you kind of can show up and just phone it in or coast, you start to get a little bored, right? Like,
Yeah.
and you don't have that edge, you don't have that. So I can totally see how kind of flipping that paradigm, putting that expectation of growth actually goes, oh, well, you're believing in me that I'm capable of more. So there's
Yes.
something significant in that you're telling me as my leader, hey, I see more in you. I see greater potential. I see more opportunity. And we rise to that challenge. And again, your thoughtfulness and how you're leading through it matters.
Yes.
But the energy and engagement I can see would just go would
Yeah.
get significantly greater. Now I know
Yeah.
in one of those situations, you had some turnover and you had to lead through a pretty big amount of turnover. So tell us a little bit about like that dynamic, how you navigated
Yeah.
turnover and then how you protected culture through that.
Yeah, and it was a season of of both some natural turnover where people's time frames just arrived in their life that they were ready to stay home with children or a
Sure. So
different
some of it
opportunity.
was just kind of natural turnover.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. About honestly, about half of it was that, and the other half was a long journey, um, in multiple years of setting the standard
Hmm.
and not not seeing the growth or the other side not wanting to grow and saying I want to keep being comfortable, I want to keep doing what I've been doing. And so that that was a moment where with the culture we had set and with the growth goals that we had, it was a hard but necessary conversation that led us to say this is our standard, we're here to support you and push you through this, and if you don't want it, I also completely understand.
Yeah.
And so that was the hard part because relationships are everything to us,
Sure.
and especially in a Christian school where you want to honor people, and there's just kind of this next level of relationship. It can be hard, but at the same time, it was really um, yeah, a season of a lot of leaving. And I really tried to explain that to my people too, is actually historically most organizations in about a decade have 1 year where it's like, whoa, everyone's changing seasons and things are different and people are leaving, and it's not because things are bad.
Right.
um,
It's just the
but
nature of the life cycle, so to
it
speak.
is. It is the nature of the life cycle, and there's usually once a decade where people just start leaving. And so for me, I worked hard to be very transparent as a leader.
Hmm.
I don't want to leave. I don't want to let people just have questions lingering, and I think that's important for culture. Is if I'm not communicating in a way that's transparent and helpful, then I'm going to leave them with questions, and then those questions uh, actually drive confusion, and confusion is going to drive discord.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so
Yep.
I worked really hard to talk about these things like the turnover in decades, the fears that could exist in the room. Like, am I next? If someone is not being given a contract, am I next? And
Yes.
it's like there's
Yep.
policies in place, there's systems in place. You would know if you're on the radar. It's never a surprise.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing is I never want someone to be surprised. And so even in those transitions, in hard conversations, those people weren't surprised. It had been a 3-year process. My people weren't surprised, right? Like culture tells a story. People saw every day what was and what wasn't.
That's right.
And if you have a standard, you got to point to the standard.
Yeah, that's so good. I was going to ask you that. I was like, okay, what was that timeline? And so if I heard you right, it was like, okay, you set the standard of, hey, here's how we do things here. Here's the
Yep.
values, behaviors that drive how we do our work here. And so you begin to live into that. You have your early adopters that are coming along with you. And then you have those few outliers. So it sounded like a couple of years went by that you gave people a chance to kind of like rise to that standard. You're coaching them through it. And they just recognize, or well, you might have recognized on their behalf they're not getting here.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you prepare both yourself and your team for those transitions when you had to kind of finally make the call? And if I hear you, you were pretty gracious in giving time and space for that change management, but then there comes a point where it's like it becomes detrimental. I'd love for you to respond to this. It becomes detrimental to your culture if you keep letting people who are outliers remain there, right?
Yes.
So
That's
you have to make that decision. Talk about like leading through that, because as much as we hate that people aren't aligned, we also don't want to see them go.
Yep. It's so true. And honestly, one of the biggest wisdoms I gained after this season of change was when I call them my impact players, right? Like my high flyers, my impact players of my culture. Um, they're the ones you look to for everything when you need something.
Right.
And
Right.
it was when they walked in my office, kind of after it all had changed and the summer had come. It's when they came in. They said, "Hey, we feel seen."
Hmm.
And we know this was hard, but we're thankful that you care about the standard of what you talk about all the time. And that's where we're working to be at every day. And so we're thankful that you did what needed to be done to hold the standard
That's a great
instead
point.
of lessening it or
Yeah.
allowing it to be different to different people.
Right.
And so it was in that, and I actually, when we were at our table together in Orlando during our event, like I had forgotten that until
Hmm.
we were amidst our leadership training. I was like, oh my gosh, that's a memory that I can't forget, because it affirms that standardized culture that you said and point people to actually is a benefit to everyone,
Yeah.
even if it's hard,
Yeah.
even if it's hard. But I think another part of that, Jenny, is I kind of talk about this cultural bank,
Hmm.
and you got to make deposits into the bank before you withdraw out of it to do something really big. And so for me, that currency in the cultural bank is two things. It's listening and it's acting. All right.
That's
So
good.
like, think of
Yeah.
that as your money. And you have this culture. And so for me to put money in the bank with my people, I need to be around them and listening at all times. Hey, what's
Huge.
going on? How are you doing personally? What's an obstacle in your way? How can I remove that? Hey, who can I shout out for you that's doing a great job? And ask questions and listen and listen and listen. So you're just depositing all the time. You're affirming people. You're there. And then the second is then take the action.
That's right.
And if I can remove obstacles in a day, I'm going to do it. If I can empower them to do something they're scared to do, I'm going to do it. And so listen and take action and just deposit, deposit, deposit. And when you do that in a culture, you're putting in a lot of money, a lot of currency in that cultural bank, because then people are like, okay, you listen to me and you act on things and you're near,
That's
you're
good.
close proximity.
Yeah.
So I did that for 3 years.
Yes.
We got to this point where like hard things needed to happen and good things,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
have those conversations with people individually and with my culture that I had put currency money into, cultural money into, of listening and acting. And because I'd proven myself, I felt like I could
You
withdraw
had the, yeah,
in a hard season and say, we've got to do a really hard thing. It's going to shake us, but there's enough money in the bank that I'm not overdrawing.
that's right. That's right.
I'm not, like, I've done, like, if I didn't do any of that and I was just going to come do changes left and right and do really hard things, I'd lose my culture.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I thought about it too, and try to be very intentional with that cultural bank.
Cory, that's so good because, one of the things I talk about in the lead culture framework is that culture is an outcome. Like, whatever we're experiencing is an outcome of all of our behaviors, of all the
Yeah.
inputs. What are we putting in and day out? And I love the deposits and withdrawals thing, because again, culture is building or eroding every day, right? We're either putting more good in or we're taking stuff out, right? And but I love what you acknowledged, the listening and acting, and then even the proximity piece that you said. Um, that's so good, because they needed to see, you listening, being aware, getting feedback, hearing what they're experiencing, what's going on in the team. So valuable. But then your consistency of action too. That, one of the refrains that I sometimes say around culture is that it's more about what we do than even what we say. We can say all the right things about the culture we want, but if they don't see us behaving consistently with that. So in the case of, setting the standard, holding those educators to, a new standard of expectation and what that looks like, and having the systems and processes to support it. And then if the people who are meeting that standard see you not acting on the ones who are not, that's a major withdrawal. Right? I mean, I know it was a withdrawal to have to make some hard decisions and make some transitions, but it's also a withdrawal if over time they see you saying, hey, here's the standard, but he never does anything about the people who don't meet the standard.
Exactly.
And in Christian organizations, we're particularly bad about this sometimes because of the relational component. You named it earlier. There is a relational side of it. We want to be thoughtful, loving people who treat others well, but that the clarity, Brene Brown says clear is kind, right? It's like that clarity of expectation, the coaching to help you get there. And then if you don't, it's actually the kindest thing to do for everyone to make the hard decision for somebody to move on. Agree with that? Any nuances to that?
No, that's spot on. Because think about that cultural currency formula, right? So I said listening plus acting and proximity equals your deposits, right? So if all I ever did was just listen, but had no action, that's not going to establish and maintain a culture.
Right.
So I heard you, but I did nothing. So you laid that out, right? Well, the flip side is true too. If I'm just acting, but I'm never listening to what's acted on, then it's just about me. And people are going to be like, what the heck? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Right. And then if you're never near in proximity, it's like you actually can't listen and you can't act.
Yeah.
So all three of those things have to play together.
That's
or
good.
You're going to get into some really difficult cultural moments.
Yeah. So good. Okay. So you're in the thick of having to make some hard decisions, some staff transitions. And that's, everybody has emotions and reactions and feelings to that. So how do you keep that team motivated, confident in the vision and direction, in the middle of change and transition? It's always like, we love getting to the other side of it, but there's just real feelings and processing that's happening. So how did you maintain momentum, positivity, keep the team engaged in transition?
Yeah, so you could just named it. I really doubled down on positivity because when you make those changes and you withdraw, we go back to fear. And
that's
no
good.
matter what, no matter as good of an experience as they've had or historically how good of a leader you've been to them, everyone's reaction is, okay, I'm fearful now. What if it would happen to me?
Yeah, what does it mean for me? That's the question we're all asking, whether consciously or not, right?
Exactly. And so if that's true, then my job as a leader culturally is to double down on positivity, to remind people who they are and what they're great at and why I value them.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did is I got to work by, having end of the year rounding meetings and listening to them and asking key questions and then doing two things at the end, giving them put ups for the great things I see them doing and then asking them, hey, how can I be better?
Good.
What is it in proximity to me that you're seeing that I can improve on? Because I'm not perfect. Or what have I maybe done that you have questions about? Because again, I'm not perfect.
That's a vulnerable question, Cory. I mean,
it is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, I want to lead that way. I want to lead in the, hey, I'm doing this with you. And I want to be fed and grown in the same direction of which you're going. So I've got to model this.
Yeah.
But that vulnerability shows them it's not, at the end of the day, it's not about us individually. It's about our culture and our standard. Right.
Yeah.
And so I did rounding meetings. I did, personal check-ins. I have like Cory's kudos little notes I sent out, like
Brilliant. Yep.
double down, like as many as I could, just so it's all over their face and that's all that they can hear and see.
So good.
And then it helps them transition through, and that fear subsides.
Mm-hmm.
So they're aware, like, hey, yeah, we're still in a really good spot. So that was really big for me. I met with my key players, my impact people. I said, hey, just tell me bluntly what's going on. How are you feeling? What's the word on the street?
Yeah.
What do I need
Good.
to be attuned to? I have lots of leadership teams set up, and so I would do the same thing. Just, hey, give me your voices, give me your thoughts. What do I need to act on? Just so everyone felt heard. So
Yeah.
they felt heard and they felt loved was really important.
That's
And then
so
at the end
good.
of the day, just kept calling people back to the standard. Hey, we have a standard here, and it's purposeful and it's on purpose and it drives our purpose.
Yeah.
And so let's just keep being called to that. And if we're all moving that way, we're all in a good place.
Yeah. This question just came to me as you were sharing all of that, because you talked about, you're recognizing that the team all resorts to fear. Like when there's uncertainty, there's change, their default is fear. Did you have some fear in leading through that? And how did you navigate that for you as the leader?
Oh, yes, so much. And I am a very relational person. And so knowing if relationships have to end is my worst nightmare. Like,
Right? Yeah. You're like, this is not like, I don't wake up like excited about, severing relationships.
And truthfully, as a leader, I was like, I need to do everything in my power to try to not let this happen, to not let it end this way.
Yeah.
And actually, Dr. Henry Cloud's book, Necessary Endings,
It's a good one.
was a key resource for me to go back and just read truths.
Yeah.
And to be reminded. But in those moments where my headspace is everywhere, I'm like, at moments you're all in for the change, and at moments you're all out. You're like, nope, backing out, not doing it. There's really two balances for me. And number one, that's going to my fellow leaders and people around me, and it's sitting down next to my my executive team that I work with every day, and taking myself out of the equation and saying, here's the facts, here's what I've been doing. You've listened to my words, and then call out my bias.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me if Cory's in the way, because if Cory's in the way, this isn't right. I'm not going to do it. And so using key voices,
good for you,
with other leaders who watch me work and listen to me work and say, just call me out, because I'll get out of the way right away if it's all me.
Yeah.
But if the facts, if the story, if all this is true, then I'll take your word for it, and I'll keep moving forward. So, I did that. I kept meeting with key leaders in my world and mentors in my world, and just said, this is where I'm at. This is what I know. Challenge me when I need to be challenged. And then at the same time, did that with my people, and just kept listening too, because there's feedback everywhere. And so I kind of went to all levels there, and that would usually help my fear subside and get back to rationality and get back to truth and go, okay, so if this is my standard and this is what we set out as a goal, then I need to move in that direction.
Yeah. Cory, that's so good. I mean, as I hear you, in all of the questions, there's just a level of humility that you bring to leadership that I think just bridges so much, right? Especially when we're talking about culture and leadership. It's like that willingness to go, well, you named it, the listening piece, right, is so critical. And the humility to say, I could be wrong, point out my bias, help me make sure I'm thinking this through. Like just inviting voices to speak in, and you're intentional, you're thoughtful about that. It's not, we need to be discerning about what voices we let speak into us. But you mentioned mentors, the key leaders in your organization that are trusted, that are on mission, that are in it with you, and also feel the level of comfort to also speak truth, right? So that's not something we can do just episodically. That's a behavior we have to do consistently, right?
Yes.
So I love that I love your story, and hearing it's just kind of woven through everything you shared. But I think it's an important thing for us when we talk about leadership, when we talk about the culture we're creating within our teams. It starts with us as a leader being willing to just have the humility to recognize we're in the leadership seat. So we need to take the responsibility for that. But it's not absent the community surrounding us and speaking into it with us, which kind of makes me think about, you mentioned earlier, you do a lot of motivational speaking, consulting. Servant leadership is a big one for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Does that kind of frame a lot of how you think just about the work you do in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I have been built that way my whole life, that I can, like, my earliest memories are serving.
Hmm.
And if you follow the Enneagram, right, I'm a 2 wing 3, which a 2 is just base service.
Yeah.
And I also like to be told, like, thank you, I see you.
Right.
So it's this like double-edged sword, but it's a really big piece of it. I also have a what would I call like a reactive doing mindset. So it's a little bit like a dog that sees a squirrel. It's like, oh hey, oh yeah, I can like go help there, and like, oh yeah, do it. And like I never do what I maybe really critically need to do, because I get caught up in like
You,
loving and serving people. It's just like I get so much joy out of it.
that's cool.
But I think it's, for me, when I'm speaking and when I'm consulting and when I'm leading my own people, there's two base beliefs that I have about myself. And that is one, um, I never want to be the one in control.
Hmm.
And so if it's Cory's way, it's the wrong way. And so that starts with me and my relationship with the Lord. Like, if I don't approach my job every day as his servant, then my culture becomes about me.
Oh, that's
And
good.
now I'm off. Okay. I'm already off on the wrong start. And if
Hmm.
in every conversation, um, that's around feedback or even celebration, and if that turns out to be about me and what I want, well, now it's Cory in the way again, right? And so I try and remove myself every moment. That's why I ask those vulnerable questions, like, hey, if you hear bias, if you hear it's all about what I want and what I'm saying, call me on it,
So
because
good.
then I'm in the way. So I want to be a servant to the Lord, and I want my work to be glorifying to the Lord, which means I got to remove myself.
Yeah.
And if I can do that, then I think work's more fun, number one, and
Right.
loving people easier. And then that joy of serving comes. And the second piece of that for me in positioning myself as a servant leader is knowing that I'm sinful and broken, and I'm going to make mistakes left and right.
Right.
And I honestly repeat that so many times to my people about, like, hey, I'm not afraid to be called out. Like, if I mess up, if I say something I shouldn't say, if you take it away that you like it went the wrong direction, or if I'm flat out wrong, please let me know.
Yeah.
And I'm the first one. I love Jocko Willick's like extreme ownership book
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
leadership. It's like, yeah, that's me. The problem is me. And I will own it, and I will tell my people straight up, like, I messed up.
Right.
And but that level is also serving to them, because it's not pointing the finger saying it's all you, it's all
That's
your
right.
fault. I shouldn't have, this shouldn't have happened to me. I had to deal with it. Like, no, I'm glad to serve the issue, and also to get myself out of the way. So when I start with those two things, putting myself second, serving the Lord, knowing that I'm broken and sinful, I'm going to mess up, I just find more joy in my work. I
That's
find more
so
joy
good.
in leadership. And that's what I try and inspire in other people, whether it's teachers leading students or it's other educational settings in businesses. It's like, get yourself out of the way. You're
Yeah.
not as important as you think you are. Like,
So
we're
good.
not. We're not. It's just
It's
like,
true.
yeah, the business, you might be the CEO, you might be the lead pastor, you might be the person calling the shots, but like, if you make it about you, you're in the way of yourself. And it
Yeah.
should be today.
Cory, gosh, this is so good. I knew when you and I first connected, I was like, I think one of the first things I said to you is, I've got to have you on the podcast, because I was
Right.
like, we have to have this conversation where other people can hear it. I really, really am grateful for your leadership, your thoughtfulness. I think it's so encouraging for all leaders to hear leaders like yourself who are being this intentional in the sphere of influence you have. And I think I don't have kids of my own, but I have lots of nieces and nephews. And
Yeah.
knowing there are educators like you who are trying to create environments that just allow people to flourish, both the teachers and the students, right? The entire ecosystem is designed to see people flourish and become everything God's designed them to be. I'm putting words in your mouth, but that was my takeaway.
Yeah.
But I'm really, really grateful for that. I'd love for you, as we wrap up, I'd love for you maybe to share, if people want to connect more with you. I know you do speaking events and things, so any way people can connect with you there. And then just any last things that you would coach us, the listeners who are saying, wow, okay, I've got a little work to do. What is one thing you would coach us to do to be intentional about culture?
Yes, I love it. Well, thank you for those amazing encouragements, for having me on. It's been so great. I have a lot of big things happening in the future. A little bit like you, like book coming out and podcast
Yay.
keep swinging, like all these great things. So that's you. I don't have a book yet, but
You will,
I'm
though.
gonna,
It's coming.
yeah, hopefully, right? One day. But I am obsessed with serving and helping people, and so greatest way is shoot me an email and we'll get time together. So my email is cnickel@dmcs.org. Um, we'll do that, and number two, I'll have some fun things. I have a website. It's corynickel.com, but like outdated because I'm in transition
I
of
was going to
going
say, you
from
got a few things going on, so we'll give you some grace on that,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it's like old school Cory speaker, and like now I have other things I do that I need to make the website. So we'll get there, but
Perfect.
they can always find me there too. But I think at the end of the day, Jenny, I would leave people with this, and with their culture, and as the burden of leadership, which is a great burden, is as I just noted, like it can quickly, you can make it feel like it's all about what you do, and at the end of the day, like I said, we're not that important, and really it's what the people are doing and what your product is. And so in that encouragement, I really encourage people, if they're wondering, am I in the way?
Hmm.
Am I in the way of my culture growing or changing? Am I in the way of my organization? I would encourage them to do this practice, which is not fun, like asterisks on it, it's not fun, but to pull 4 to 5 key people in their organization around them and ask them this question: what am I doing that is in the way of our culture growing to be what we want it to be? That's
Hmm.
the question. And no matter what, you got to tell those people to be honest and say, this is not a boss moment. This is person to person. I need to grow. But if people are in that position where they feel like maybe I'm in the way, maybe not, you know what? Sometimes I don't know if I'm in the way, so I just do this practice anyway. And I pull my key players and I say, hey, what have I done that has put me in the way of where we want to go? And
That's so
just
good.
give it to me. And it's vulnerable. You almost think like, oh, doesn't that doesn't feel like leadership. Well, you're right. It's not. It's servant leadership.
That's right.
It's getting vulnerable and real with your people, but it's a great practice, and it just allows you to hear the truth. And sometimes it's a worthy cause in order to get yourself out of the way.
Cory, that's so good. We are going to put all of this in the show notes, but particularly those two questions, because I think if all of us were willing to just ask that question, what am I doing that is in the way of our culture growing to be what we want it to be? Like if we're willing to pull a few people around us and really
Yeah,
ask that question honestly, that could be a game changer for so many of us.
yeah.
So thank you for your leadership. Thanks for investing in us today. Absolutely a gift. Thanks, Cory.
It's been wonderful. Thanks for having me, and for all those leaders out there, keep leading. Right, you're doing great things.
All right, friends. I really want you to go gather a few of your key leaders and ask that question. What am I doing that is in the way of our culture growing to be what we want it to be? What am I doing as a leader that's holding us back from being who we need to be? The willingness to get vulnerable and to get honest about that question could be a game changer for your organization. So I hope you will take his advice and do that. Also, be sure to reach out to Cory if he can be a resource to you in any way. Just a phenomenal leader that I'm really grateful that our paths crossed this year. And then let me know what you thought about this in this episode. Give us that rating or review on wherever you listen to episodes, listen to your podcast, or if you're watching us on YouTube, which is new. So if you're watching us on YouTube, I'm really glad you've joined us. If you're not, go get subscribed over at YouTube, because we are starting to just do all of the podcast episodes also on YouTube. So I'd love to see you there. And then share it with a friend. There's another leader that you're talking about culture day in and day out, and you know you need to process this content together. So go share this with that leader, and keep learning and growing together. Friends, I am grateful for you. I'm grateful for your desire to be a part of this lead culture community. Leadership and stewarding culture are some of the most critical work that we do, and I'm glad that you're a part of it with me. So thank you for being here. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next week.